Okay, Abaye, welcome to Barrels, Bread, and a Braying Donkey, and the wild world of Talmudic dreams. Today we're going to be going to a lot of interesting places, although I have to say for the most part, we'll be sticking around the barrel. Tonight's exceptional class, I hope it's going to be an exceptional class, the exceptional subject matter of the class, and our class is sponsored by Michelle Kahn to commemorate the yahrzeit of her father. His name was Tzvi Mordechai ben Harav Moshe, of blessed memory. The Neshama shall have an aliyah, and as they say in Poland, Af ala Yidna Yeshia. Okay? So, with no further ado, let us begin to continue our studies of the exchanges between Abaye, Rava, and Bar Haddaya, or Bar Haddaya, as they say in the yeshiva world. For those who are joining us for the first time, or who haven't been watching the previous episodes, you should go back and watch them. But in the meantime, let me briefly summarize by telling you that there was a very strange and enigmatic fellow named Bar Haddaya or Bar Haddaya, and this man had a unique ability to interpret people's dreams. It's not something that he worked on, it's not something that came to him by virtue of his education or erudition, but as we have learned, it was a natural gift. He had a knack, he had a certain prescience, a certain ability to understand things simply by looking at realities and hearing, especially when it came to the subconsciousness. He was a natural. He was a natural. And some of the greatest sages of all time, who lived at the same time, were going to this Bar Haddaya, this Babylonian fellow, and we don't even know if he's Jewish, as we talked about in previous episodes, but very learned, very learned. I mean, you can see he's very learned. He knows all kinds of things. I'm just saying that the insight that he has is not based on his learning per se. The insight is based on a certain prescience, he was a natural.
Prescience is the word you're looking at, right?
No, prescience.
Okay.
Prescience. He was a prescient person. He somehow...
He had knowledge of future events before.
No. Yeah, first of all, so there was a...
Prescience means.
Yeah, I know what prescience means. He was somewhat clairvoyant. He was sort of clairvoyant in his understanding of dreams. He had this clairvoyancy insofar as interpreting dreams. What I mean to say is, he draws on a very, very wide range of knowledge to be able to interpret or to explain and to present his ideas, his visions. So in order to justify or to explain to the people whose dreams he's interpreting, he draws on an extraordinary range of information, Torah information, and Torah understanding. I'm just saying that it's not merely the sum of its parts. It's not simply the result of somebody who was wise and learned, but instead there was a certain prescience. Yeah, you have to know that. We talked about this in the previous episode. I don't want to harp on it, but I'm just bringing that to mind because I think that's important as we continue to move our way through the interpretation of these dreams. Now, one of the things that's been happening is that Rava is always getting negative interpretation, and Abaye is always getting a positive interpretation.
From seemingly the same dream.
From seemingly the same dream. Well, we shouldn't say seemingly. From the same dream. The same exact vision seems to be saying very different things. Now, it should be noted that Abaye was paying for the interpretation and Rava wasn't, which leads us to a lot of questions about is this for real? Like, how does this work? But I'm just saying that those are the facts. Initially, in the earliest episodes, Abaye was being responded to first, and as I shared with you, that's because there was this possibility that maybe Bar Haddaya thought he was going to get through to Rava, and then he said, forget about it, this guy's not giving money anyway, and so he just focused on Abaye first, which is typically the way it is in the Gemara. We usually have Abaye and Rava because Abaye is older than Rava. And we're going to find out that a lot of the things, if not all the things he said, were like bang on. He was like right on, in a like a chilling way, scary way. So this is going to be the final round of Abaye and Rava having the same dream and getting different interpretations. This is the final round. So we're going to go through, I think, 3 or 4 exchanges, maybe 5 exchanges. We're going to finish that off, And subsequent, in the next episode, we're going to move into a new kind of relationship where Rava comes to Bar Haddaya or Bar Haddaya alone. And there's a lot to say about that, but that's our next episode. That's going to be afterwards. But for now, I want you to focus on the fact that they're going to be seeing visions or images. There's a common image which we're going to focus on a number of times, and that is a barrel. And it's not the first time that they've had dreams of the barrel. In the last episode of our previous Gemara, the last exchange of the previous episode, there was also the appearance of a barrel. And I want to say one final thing, one as a preface, before we actually begin to sink our teeth into the meat and potatoes of tonight's class. And that is, we have learned, and we will continue to emphasize, that when a dream conveys a message, the imagery by virtue of which the message is being conveyed is going to be something that was already in your mind. It's going to be something that was already in your mind.
The event or the characters?
These images or these sounds or these words.
Okay.
It's in other words, the dream messaging is co-opting the things that are already dormant in your mind. They're already there in your mind. And I'll give you a simple example for this. In order for you to appreciate what I'm going to be sharing with you tonight, you need to have a good understanding of the English language. I mean, that's because this class is in English. I'm speaking English. And if you don't understand English well, you might have a difficult time understanding what I'm saying. And in addition to the fact that you need a decent command of the English language, you also may understand what I say tonight differently. In fact, I'm pretty sure you'll understand a little bit differently because each of you has a different set of experiences and thinks a little bit differently. So you're going to be absorbing the messages of the Gemara as I am sharing them by virtue of whatever ability Hashem has given me to explain and to articulate and to share the Gemara in a language that we speak today, 21st century Jews in Canada. But you're also going to be absorbing it along the lines of the things you have already understood. This is just called human nature. We continue to build on the things that we already understand. So if somebody says hot to you, or very hot, what do you think of? The hottest you've ever been. Somebody says very cold to you, you'll think of a very cold experience. And the same is true when somebody asks you about pain or about joy or about pleasure. We all have our own frame of reference. And that's how we empathize, that's how we connect, that's how we relate, that's how we intellectualize. We all do it in our own way. That doesn't mean that what's being told to us is something we know already, or that it was necessarily information that was tailored for us. So the dream is a message that has to come to you. How's the message coming to you? So the message is going to be co-opting, like we talked about this malach, which means like a force or an energy that is going to be conveying the message to you, that Hashem sends to convey a message to you. It's obviously going to be using the things that are already in your mind. Okay, this is important because in the previous episodes where they were hearing teachings, verses, psukim of the Torah, it actually makes sense that they should be dreaming about the same psukim because that's the pasuk they studied in the yeshiva that day. So that's the pasuk. So that's the words he heard. But how is it that they end up seeing the same thing? And here is a simple suggestion. Because they did the same thing for a living. No, they didn't do Rosh Hashivas for a living. They were vinters. They were vinters, winemakers or wine sellers. And when you speak of wine vinters or sellers, with an S, what is the image that comes to mind? If you want to make an icon for wine, what's the icon? A barrel, exactly. Because long before people came along with the idea of fermenting whiskey in barrels, they were fermenting wine in barrels. And in fact, many of the whiskey makers like to use wine barrels. And that's the whole sherry casks thing. Right? There's big problems and questions in halacha, which are not going to be talked about today. So Yitzi's asking an interesting question. Do you know how much time passed over all of these exchanges? The answer is we don't. It could have been over a period of time. It could have been in succession. We actually don't know. And the interesting thing that I would like to observe is We don't know because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If it would matter, we would know. The Mefarshim would have to talk about it, they have to find the hint. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's it seems to be that it happened in succession or within a fairly, limited amount of time. But we don't know. This is a few days, a few weeks. I don't know. We don't know. Okay, so if you are a winemaker, a vinter, a wine cellar, what's going to be the icon, the big thing? The barrel, right? So it's not a surprise that Rava and Abaye are seeing barrels at night, because they're dealing barrels during the day. They're looking at a lot of barrels. It's not surprising. What is surprising is that the accompanying vision is also the same. That's surprising. And we'll do like exchange by exchange and try to understand how it is that they would have seen the same thing, and how it is that Bar Haddaya, in his incredible clairvoyance and dream interpreting brilliance, sees such different messages within that. And by the way, once we're finished with the barrels, then we're going to be in some really strange places. Right? The barrels is not nearly as enigmatic or unusual as what's going to come after that. Amri lay. So they said to Bar Haddaya, and Amri sounds like they're speaking together. This is something that they experienced together.
What page?
Daf Nun Vav, page 56 of the folio pages of the Talmud, side A. I'm going to guess it's page 56 in your version, maybe A3, A2 or A3. That's what I would guess.
56? Are you sure about that?
Nun Vav is 56, yeah.
Okay.
Omri lay, they said to him, Chazon bisra alpum danei. We saw meat on the mouth or opening of the barrels. Now we've heard about the danei. Danei is barrels in Aramaic. So we learned about the last time there was lettuce at the mouth of the barrel. And now we're going to be talking about meat on the mouth of the barrel. So Bar Haddaya responds and he says like this. La Abaye Omar lei. To Abaye he said, Besim chamroch, your wine is going to be exceptionally aromatic. 56. Your wine is going to be, the word basim comes from the word bosam. There's an interesting Rashi that's found in Masechet Bava Metzia and Daf Samach, where it speaks about the idea of the wine being basim or aromatic. And it says over there that this is a reference to wine which has I guess you would call it flavor today. It's a euphemism for flavor, something like that. Where is it? Maschel Basim. Don't read ahead. Why are you reading ahead?
No, we just found the place.
You found the place.
Where?
A2.
A2.
52, halfway down. Just saw meat on the mouth, the keg.
Okay, oh, look at that, okay.
Talmud.
Where is that Rashi? I found the Rashi before.
Oh, I remember this from last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yes, 2 weeks ago was the lettuce, now was the wine.
Right.
Okay, anyway, Rashi does explain in Masechet Bava Metzia, and he says that Basim Yayin means that the wine is called mevusam. Mevusam. So mevusam literally means like aroma. And aroma means perfume. Perfumed wine is not good wine. But what does it mean? Like these wine professionals, they smell the wine.
Like a full body.
Right, like a full body, exactly, like a whole range of aroma and taste. It means the wine has personality. So the wine is going to be exceptional. It's going to be very, very good wine. And because it's going to be such good wine, he says, your wine is going to turn out so good. And listen, I'm not a winemaker, but my understanding is that everything needs to have mazel, Even the Sefer Torah in the base of English needs to have mazel. Wine needs to have mazel too, right? Like you can do everything you're supposed to do. It doesn't mean the wine is going to come out always to be fantastic. So he says your wine is going to be fantastic this year. It's going to be very, very literally spicy, but I mean it means it's going to be very, very aromatic and full-bodied. And because it's going to be so, asu kule alma lemizban bisra v'chamra minoch. Everybody is going to come. Now I'm just going to read this literally. To purchase meat and wine from you.
Are they selling meat?
Now this makes no sense. First of all, we never heard about them selling meat. We have no information about them ever being butchers or selling meat. Why would they sell meat? And why is it even a blessing? A person who sells wine, tell him you'll be selling meat. It's like, meat? I don't want to sell meat. I don't want to be a butcher. I'm a vinter. Why would he want to sell meat? So I started to think like this. I started thinking like in Shulchan Aruch, in the Shulchan Aruch, it's Siman Reish Mem Beis in chapter 242, and in the Torah it's in Siman Reish Nun. I think in the regular Shulchan Aruch maybe Reish Samach Beis. It's different. It's mentioned in different places in Shulchan Aruch, but in Shulchan Aruch talks about the importance of delightful food for Shabbat. And the Alter Rebbe, kind of builds chapter 242 of the Shulchan Aruch, Hilchos Shabbos. He builds it in the Rambam style, which is the 30th chapter of Hilchos Shabbos. So it's not similar to what we find in the version of the Shulchan Aruch, the Torah, or the Shulchan Aruch of the Bet Yosef. But Alter Rebbe focuses there on kavod va'oneg, and he talks about like what is delightful on Shabbos. And he says, in the days of the Talmud, they used to have fish. Fish was the big thing. So like in the Middle East, fish was the big thing. And in the Gemara, they talked about the fish that was famous not in Israel, but the fish that was famous in Babylon, because most of the world's Jews lived in Babylon. And the finest fish that was to be caught in the Euphrates River was called the shibauta, or shibuta.
And in English, what is that?
It's a shibauta.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I was once curious, so I before the days of ChatGPT, I Googled. Remember those days?
That's what ChatGPT gets a lot of their stuff.
I know, and half of it ChatGPT makes up. That's why I'm a little afraid. But Google more or less gives you sources. So it turns out that the shibuta fish was a famous fish in antiquity and is still a delicacy in Iraq, and it's in the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and it can grow to something like 2 meters.
Oh, that's huge.
It's a big fish. It's a big fish, the shibuta. That's a big fish. So it's interesting. We're talking about Rava. It says that Rava used to salt the fish. I guess he had locks. He used to salt the fish for Shabbos by himself. And from this we know that it's a mitzvah to do something by yourself, even if you have other people who typically do it for you. So Rava used to salt the fish by himself. Okay, but the Alter Rebbe says that was b'mei chachmei Gemara. B'mei chachmei, fish was the big thing. And then he says you should know that there's no mitzvah in the Torah that you have to eat meat to drink wine. There's no mitzvah in the Torah you have to eat meat to drink wine. No, there's no mitzvah in the Torah. In other words, it's not like it doesn't matter, you do like it, you don't like it, it's popular, it's not. If that's what you have to eat, that's what you have to eat. And by the way, on Yom Tov, it's a mitzvah to eat meat. On Yom Tov, it's a different thing. There's the idea of simcha. The Rebbe says it's not necessary. You don't have to eat meat and wine. But he says you should have meat and wine. Because most people enjoy meat and wine. Did you ever go to a wedding where they serve French toast? Why, you don't like French toast? What's wrong? No. I like French toast also, but when you go to a fancy dinner and they come out with the French toast, it's like, what is it, breakfast? Something is funny, right? When you come to a fancy dinner, what do you expect at a fancy dinner?
Meat.
Yeah, you expect meat. Right? And what's the fancy drink? Wine. So I think like meat and wine is like in the modern vernacular is like French fries and ketchup. Red wine. So if you were a vinter, you're selling fine wine, it's like the French fry guy who knows where you're getting your ketchup. And he might even have like a supplier who supplies the ketchup, or like he has a deal, you buy your French fries here, you get your ketchup there. If you get your mustard here, you get the hot dog there. The meat and the wine kind of was it came together. So for Abaye, he was telling him that your wine is going to be amazing. So they're going to buy wine, they're going to buy meat, and then they're going to look for the right wine to drink with the meat. That's the business of the wine, which is on the mouth, the meat on the mouth of the wine. That's what I was thinking. And then I saw Taka that they bring down one of the Mefarshim, says something very interesting. He says that his name is called the Mara-Eish. He says that it doesn't mean they'll buy meat and wine from you. You should read it like this. He should say, Kula alma, the asu kula alma, lemizbin b'sara. People will go shopping for meat. The chamra minoch, and the wine will be from you. And the wine will be from you. In other words, that they're not going to be buying meat and wine from you. They're going to be buying meat, and when they go and buy meat, what's the next stop after the butcher? Everybody gets the finest cut, and they get their good meat, and they say, now we're off to Abaye's wine shop, because Abaye's got the best wine in town. His crop this year is something fantastic.
But look what it says here. It says, for you will offer products of superior quality. So you understand, it's like they're rationalizing that he's going to all of a sudden sell meat. That's not true.
I a lot of things about the translation I don't agree with.
Okay.
Right, so I don't think that's right. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense that suddenly he went into the meat business, and then the next image is going to be pomegranate. So he went into the pomegranate business. Then he went into the bread business. It doesn't make any sense. It makes sense. And why would they have thoughts like that? And why would he be dreaming of meat if he's not actually selling meat? But if he's thinking of meat because that's the usual condiment. They go together, meat and wine. So it's a French fries and ketchup, meat and wine. If you see French fries all day, you might dream French's ketchup at night. Could happen such a thing because of the association.
Is it so much the item, because we're reading there's palm trees, pomegranates, is it the item itself? I'm sure it has significance, or is it the difference in interpretation of the same item?
There's actually, I think, a number of moving pieces here. Yeah. The first thing we have to make sense out of is the fact that they would have the same image in their mind. Like the image was in their mind. And if you remember in all the earlier things we came, we said, okay, this is what they studied today in Yeshiva. And clearly, at least those dreams should probably happen around the same time. They were studying the Tochacha, because they're all verses which are approximately in the same portion of the Torah. So now all of a sudden they're having similar images. Why are they having similar images suddenly?
Because they both have the same profession.
Because they have the same profession. It makes sense. The barrels. Vinters.
Vintners.
Sorry.
Vinter is Norwegian for winter. Okay, come on. Okay.
Forgive me, Father, if I have sinned.
Well, that's not good enough.
How do you pronounce that properly?
Vintner.
Vintner. I will try to remember that.
Winemaker.
Okay, vintner. I just want to say that as long as my mistake is in English, not in the Gemara, I'm okay. Now here's the interesting reason why I think my reading of the Gemara is right, not like the way they translate it there. That they're going to buy meat and wine, they'll buy from you. Why am I saying that? Because let's look at the continuation. So after we have the interpretation of the meat and meat and wine for Abaye, what comes next? Next comes Rava.
Rava's interpretation.
So the Rava Amarle said, Takif chamroch, your wine is going to become very sour, very strong, but strong in a negative one. It's going to be overpowering, meaning it turns into vinegar. People will use your wine as vinegar for the meat. They will flavor.
Oh, that's good.
They will flavor their meat with your wine. It doesn't say you're going to buy meat from you. Now, if it's true that they're buying meat from Abaye, why aren't they buying meat from Rava? It doesn't make any sense. So what makes sense is that they were both vintners. Did I get that right?
Vintners.
Oy vey, vintners. This is going to be very hard for me to unlearn. Like you have a mistake in your head for the last 20 years. Vintners. Okay. So they're how about wine cellars with an S?
Yeah, that's good.
So they're wine cellars, and they're in the food industry. They're in the food industry. That's what they do, and because they're not in they don't sell cornflakes. They're not the tevya. They're not selling butter or milk. They're selling like a wine. It's a kind of product, certain kind of product. So what do you associate with wine? Meat. That's what goes together. You see, basar v'yayin is a euphemism throughout Torah literature. We have about basar v'yayin. So basar v'yayin is two ways to understand it. Either the basar v'yayin means they're going to drink the wine with your meat, or the basar v'yayin means they're going to cook the wine, cook the meat with the wine. Cook the meat with the wine. So this becomes the question. What is the relationship between the meat and the wine? Is the relationship between the meat and the wine that they are cooked as one, and in that case, the wine has gone bad? Because it's certainly a waste to cook good wine with meat. Why would you do that? You want to cook the meat. You want to look and anyway, people need vinegar. People cook with vinegar. Wine vinegar is very popular in cooking. Nobody likes to say l'chaim on it. It's not a popular drink. It's a popular cooking ingredient. So for Rava, he said the meat and wine are going to be cooked together. And if the meat and wine are cooked together, then your wine is going to be terrible. And for Abaye, he said your wine is going to be drunk with good meat. People are going to want to eat their meat with wine. And because of that, the result must be that the wine is delicious wine. It's the wine everybody wants. So it's like a very interesting, it's almost the same interpretation, but it's totally different. In one, the meat and the wine unite in the pot. In one, the meat and the wine unite in the plate or on the palate. And they're not so far apart. In both, the meat is on the mouth of the barrel. So the question is, are we talking about the cooking of the meat, or are we talking about the eating of the meat? In which way is the wine going to be participating? That's the different interpretations. And when you think about this, although for one interpretation business is booming, and for the other he's going bust because his crop of wine, his vintage is terrible this year, it's in interpretation wise, it's not so far apart. Interpretation wise, there seems to be a great deal of corollary or similarity between the two. Anyway, I think that's how you have to learn this, and to learn this as them becoming meat sellers, to me does not make any sense. All right, we're good with exchange 1. Tov, let's move on to exchange 2. The next dream. Once again, the image is the barrel. However, the associating, the things that are next to the barrel, that's what's going to be changing up and shifting. Says the Gemara. Yeah, Amalei. It's this very small lines of it. Amrulei. They said, Chozon chavito detoli bedikla. We had this image. We saw that the barrels were hanging from a palm tree or a date tree, to be precise. They're swinging from the trees. What is the meaning of this image? La Abaya, Omar Leita Abaya, he said, Midlei iskoch kidikla. Your business is going to rise up, to grow tall, like a date tree, like a palm tree. Now you know that one of the things that we hear about in Torah literature is trees. There's a lot of talk about trees in Torah. And then there's specific trees that are identified, and they have different messaging and different ideas. One of the things that we speak about in Torah, and this is one example, is tzaddik katomar yifrach. We talk about the tzaddik, and we talk about him blossoming like a date tree. Israel was famous for date trees. Like Lebanon was famous for cedars, Israel was famous for date trees. And of course, milk and honey. Eretz Zavas Chalav Dvash is talking about dates. Right. And one of the, I would say, Shiva Minim, the 7 kinds that embody Israel, that come to symbolize the land of Eretz Yisrael, is the dates. Is the dates. And that's the idea of Dvash. In addition, the date branch, the palm branch, is also a mitzvah. It's the only such thing. We have a mitzvah on Sukkot where we take a palm branch. And we know that this is an imagery that was very much a part of Jewish life. It's fascinating to me that on the Bar Kochva coins, which we have many Bar Kochva coins around today, one of the images that's there is the date tree. Why? So coins in those days had faces of emperors. Not Jewish coins. Jewish coins never have faces. How come? Because they graven image. You're not allowed to make a raised relief of a human face. You're not allowed to do that. So what were the Jewish people going to put on their coins?
The temple.
So they put the image, the facade of the Beis HaMikdash, which is how we have an idea of what the facade of the Beis HaMikdash looked like. And one of the other things they put is the Arba Minim. They put a lulav and they put an esrog. Because it was imagery. The pomegranate's an imagery. We're going to talk about pomegranate soon. These are powerful images of Jewish people, and they play a role in Jewish life. They're talked about in Jewish life. The interesting thing about the date tree in Eretz Yisrael is that according to the Gemara, the Romans destroyed all of the date trees of Israel. Every date tree. They went after every date tree. They laid Israel to waste. If you think that these images coming out of Gaza, which are 100% Hamas's fault, not 50%, not 89%, 100%, that you see like entire blocks of that are desolate, that's with bombs. With the Romans, it was by hand. They literally burnt the country down.
You know we have those date trees back.
One of the most amazing little stories over the last 2 decades is the seeds of dates that were found in Metzada that were replanted, germinated.
They're trees now.
They're trees now in the University of Beersheba, and they're trees now. This is the return of the Israeli date tree. It is literally Tchias HaMesim of a genre of trees that stopped existing. You know, the Gemara says that the date had all these properties. That it was like filling like bread. It had like this a carbohydrate kind of thing, and it sounds that have some kind of proteins attached to it. And the Gemara tells us that the dates of Bikas Genusar, which was a very, very fertile valley in Israel, were so profound that it could literally make your hair fall out, make it change your skin texture. This is very powerful stuff. And like we all eat dates, and we know dates. And like, all right, it's nothing.
Dates are different.
Our dates are very different, exactly. So we're going to find out soon. I think it takes like 70 years or something till it actually produces fruits. But when these trees, Chas v'Shalom, Mashiach didn't come yet, when these trees produce dates, we may be in for a huge surprise. Right. It's going to be like, wow. Like all these things that the Gemara talked about that made no sense to everybody, all of a sudden like... Right. Anyway, I'm sharing this because when you hear about a date tree in the Gemara, you should just understand that for Jewish people, like dates played a whole role. The tzaddik, the date is a thing. It's a thing. And it's a tall tree. It's a very tall tree. We know what palm trees look like.
Support a barrel.
Of course it couldn't support a barrel. This is a dream.
Oh yeah.
Dreams, strange things happen. So the dreams, he dreams that he has barrels hanging off the date trees.
Yeah, you know.
It's not so surprising that an image of a date tree would be in the mind of a Torah sage. It's not a surprising thing. It's not a surprising image. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It's like please forgive the comparison. But for a Christian who's having a dream of fir trees in December, it wouldn't be surprising. You're having a hard time with that.
Like a tenenbaum, like a Christmas tree?
Yeah. I'm just saying that's a thing they do. I don't know. They're into the tree. You know, like or for like if you or I might have a dream of schach, of bamboo, or of evergreen. I don't mean to make some mentions of it. Whatever, I'm just saying, like, it's not surprising that Abaye and Rava would have even if they live in Eretz Yisrael, it's not surprising that they would have the image of a date tree. It's not a surprising thing. It's not surprising. For all we know, this could have been around. So, because also, we don't know when the dream happened. It's not a shocking thing. It's like, how in heaven did they come up with a date tree? It's not surprising. So to Abaye, he says, yeah, it's going to be great. Your business is going to skyrocket. Sales are going through the roof. And it's going to be like the tree shoots up and is so tall and stately. That's what your business is going to look like.
I would never get that from that dream. Never.
Well, you're not Bar Haddaya.
Right.
So, but here's the incredible thing. He said, "L'Rava Amarle." So, Rava, how are you going to interpret this negatively? What could you see negative in a date tree? And this is mamash unbelievable what he says.
It's going to fall on you.
He says, "Chale iskach kitamre." Chale iskach kitamre. Rashi says, "Mitok." It's going to be sweet. Kilomar, in other words, shetitein schorotcha bezol. That your merchandise is going to sell cheap. Now, broadly speaking, if you ask somebody what the description of sweet would make you think about, and you had to put positive or negative?
I would think positive.
Positive, for sure positive, right? So okay, so for Abaye, he looked at the tree itself. For Rava, he looked at the fruit of the tree. But either way, it's positive.
You would think.
Like you would think. So the Metzapa Eson, he just says, take a look and think about a Menachas on page 87. He just says, Ayin Menachas Pezayin. Take a look at Menachas Pezayin. The top of the page is talking about the libations that were brought in the Beit HaMikdash, the wine offerings that were poured in the Mizbeach. And the Gemara starts off saying the following: Ein mevi'in lo matok v'lo mevushel. You don't bring sweet wine, and you don't bring boiled wine. Mevushel means wine which is already cooked.
That's not wine.
So, as you might know, for a variety of kashrus reasons, much of the wine that we are drinking today will have the words mevushel on it. But it's usually not the finest wines. It's not the best wines.
No.
Because heating up the wine changes the wine. And it usually doesn't change it for the better. Now, one of the controversial things about the world of wine and kashrus today is when sometimes they heat it up to the point of pasteurization, or like 86 degrees or something. It's hardly mevushel, and it doesn't affect the wine. So the big question is that even called mevushel? And there's a big machlekes apaskim today about this.
Mevushel is boiled.
Mevushel is really boiled. So what they're doing now on the kosher symbols is, it says in Hebrew, sometimes it says it in English also, mevushel via or by pasteurization, but it will say mevushel ayadei pastur. That's what it means. And there are some people who will say that's not mevushel enough for me.
Right.
I'm looking for real mevushel or not real mevushel.
Tell them why.
Now,
Tell everybody
so why is this? So the reason that we have to be careful with regard to wine is because in antiquity, many people used wine for sacramental purposes. And it's called yayin nesach. So if somebody would take wine and he would make it as a sacramental thing, an offering to an idol, it becomes prohibited. Now, in many religious systems even today, wine is still used as a sacrament. Or it's the thing they don't drink, or it's the thing they pour, or it's the thing they do. So it's not so simple that it doesn't exist anymore. But once upon a time, it was very common. And once upon a time, it was so common, it was like a way of thing. Like you move the wine a little bit, and that was like already an act of homage. So it will become prohibited. So then it gets more interesting. Then we have this idea that the Chachamim wanted to prevent a fraternal closeness between Jewish people and non-Jewish people, because we're not supposed to marry non-Jewish people. And they're not supposed to marry us. So we're friends, we're acquaintances, we're courteous, but we're not getting married. We're not into marrying. And one of the things that people do together is drink wine. Wine is the thing that brings people together. You know, you think about, let's have a romantic night with some ginger ale. No. If it's going to be romance and wine, again, that's a natural connection. Orange juice, okay, it's nice, but so the Chachamim said if we're going to make sure that we don't drink wine together, we're going to limit the depth or the profundity of the friendship. That's the idea. Now, and here's where it gets really interesting. When the Chachamim made a decree, when the Chachamim made an injunction, which is similar to something that's already biblical, so then they followed the well-worn biblical delineation of that idea. That is to say, because there's a biblically prohibited wine, and now we're going to talk about wine which has absolutely nothing to do with idolatry, because these people are not idolaters. They're fine people. They worship Hashem. They respect Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. It's very nice. It's very nice, but it's not. We don't want to intermarry. Intermarriage spells the doom and gloom. It's the end of the Jewish people, Rahman al-San. So we don't want to have intermarriage. But since the wine that was prohibited for idolatrous purposes would not be prohibited if it was cooked, because that was already a downgraded kind of wine, and you have to bring a korban from the finest of wines. So then the same would also be true with regard to the injunction that the sages made, that the injunction would only follow wine which is not mevushal, meaning ro'oi la mizbeach, that it's worthy of sacramental purposes, of offering purposes, of altar purposes. Why am I sharing this with you? What is the connection? The point that I'm trying to make is that cooked wine is downgraded wine. It is not the finest wine. It can still be wine. It's not the finest wine. Fine wines are not cooked. Really fine wines. Like the $300 bottles. Nobody's cooking those. It's not happening. The Gemara puts together something with cooked wine. You know what else is like cooked wine? Sweet wine. Sweet wine. One of the most popular kosher wines today is the Bartanura ginger ale. Moscato.
That's a dessert wine.
Exactly. It's not a serious wine. The blue bottle over the blue wine. The blue bottle, right? Go with the blue or something. How much do those bottles cost?
$10.
Not $10, even in Canada. It's not expensive wine. There are some good wines out there today. So real wine. If your name is Rava, and you're planning to make wine, and all of a sudden all you ended up with is this sweet Manischewitz stuff, or the Bartanura Blue, you did not have a good year. Why? Because your stuff was sweet. So sweet, it's cute, but it's not quality. Quality wine is dry wine, semi-dry, semi-sweet. There's a whole variety of wines, fancy wines, but fancy wines as a rule are not the sweet wines. When I was growing up as a kid, like in the 1970s, 1980s, how many wines were there available? Kosher wines. Mamish. Like there was literally a handful of wines, kedem, and it was all this syrup. It was so bad. It was so bad.
Kids liked it.
Yeah, kids liked it. And I remember there was this first time I even heard the word dry wine. I think it's like 1979 or 1980. There was an Italian kosher wine called Valpolicella. Don't ask why I remember this.
Yeah.
And my father came home and he said, Valpolicella. And he's talking about this Valpolicella wine. And he's so excited, this is kosher wine, it's real wine. And we tasted it as kids. Feh! Give me the grape juice. Like, this is terrible stuff. And we couldn't understand why my father likes it.
It was good wine. It was.
Right? It's like real wine. I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's around anymore. But the point is, and this is something interesting, which it's nothing to do with the Gemara, but I'm just going to interject for a second. The wine that Israel was producing up until 1970s was terrible. Terrible wine. And Carmel wine had an awful name. But the wine that Israel started to produce when we came home to the Golan, when we came home to what the world calls the West Bank, it's called Yehuda v'Shomron, where the Torah says the grapes are going to be amazing, where the Torah says the wine is going to be wine that rivals the finest wines of the world. Guess what happened?
It's true.
It's mamish true. All of a sudden, our Israeli wines are competing with the wines from the French Riviera and the Napa Valley. How'd that happen? How'd that happen? Because Eretz Yisrael is the land that has everything, including the most amazing grapes and the most phenomenal wine. So if your wine is good, your wine is sweet wine, that's not good wine. At best, you call that Kiddush wine. Kiddush wine is cheap. You want to buy real wine? Real wine is real wine. Real wine, the wine that people, not everybody likes wine. Little children don't like wine. It's an acquired taste. But nice wine, like real wine, is not sweet wine. So Bar Haddaya said to Rava, he said he didn't look at the trees, he looked at the produce of the tree. And I'm going to give you like a little thing that I was just thinking, because I like to think. So what is the representation of a tree, and what is the representation of the fruit of the tree? So the tree is very stately. The tree represents excellence within oneself. And the fruits represent what you give for somebody else. So the Gemara tells us that what does it mean that ha'adam eitz hasada, that the person is like a tree? So the Gemara says you have to look not just about who the person is, what the knowledge they have, but you have to look about how they treat others, what they provide for others. If they provide, if they're kind, if they're compassionate, if they're engaging, if they're giving, so then you should learn, then you should take from that tree. But if it's a tree which doesn't produce fruit, if it's a tree which doesn't give to others, we're going to call that in Yiddish, it's not a mensch. He doesn't have midot tovot, doesn't relate to others in a beautiful way. It's just the intelligence part of the tree, just the personality, the self-perfection of the tree. That's the tree. The tree is a beautiful thing. It's tall. It's stately. It has it spreads its branches. Trees are very beautiful and majestic, but the most important thing of the tree is what it gives. It's the two elements of the tree. There's the tree and what the tree gives, and the tree has the separate imagery. We see in Torah that this imagery is divided between one kind of tree you cut down and one kind of tree you don't. One kind of tree, this is So I think Bar Haddaya knew that Gemara. He understood that you can divide, you can see two things in the tree. You could either look at the tree or look at the fruit of the tree. So if wine's going to be like a tree, ever see like make like a tree? How could wine be like a tree? What could wine have in common with? If you were a vintner, if you were a vintner,
Close enough for government work.
And somebody said to you, your wine's going to be like a tree. Like how could you see that as positive? Like wine like a tree? I could say, but the sales will go up. Sales will go high, right? If you're in the business of wine. But if you say that your wine is not like the tree, but it's like the fruit of the tree,
Oh, that's nice.
yeah, it's very nice, but it's not nice for wine. In other words, dates are a wonderful commodity, but nobody spends a few $100s on a bushel of dates. Dates are just a snack. It's a sweet snack. Dates are to fruit, like what orange juice is to beverages.
Life-sustaining.
It's fine, it's fantastic, but if you're a vintner, that's not what you're looking for. And I think that's the pshat that Rashi says. Rashi says he compared it to the fruit. And what does it mean that it's compared to the fruit? Chali, masoik, sweet. Oh, that's great. No, it's not. Keloimar, in other words, shetitin schirascha bezoil. That it's going to be cheap wine. So the wine didn't make it. So the wine's poured over. Some of his wine is turning into vinegar. That's the wine that's supposed to be like, the really fermented wine ferments over the edge and it turns into vinegar. And the other wine, which hardly ferments, ends up being the sweet stuff. Not very expensive, doesn't fetch a high price. So Rava's business, Abaye's business is going to boom. And Rava, not really. And from here we go to the next image. Omri lei, they said to him, Chazon rumana de kodcha apum danei. We saw a pomegranate. Rumana is a pomegranate. We saw that it was on the mouth of the barrel. So what does this mean? That the pomegranates are clustered on the mouth of the barrel. What's the imagery? Now, pomegranates, once again, as I pointed out earlier, that's the imagery in Judaism. Pomegranates are a thing, right?
613 seeds.
613 seeds supposedly in each one, but you counted?
My kids did.
Okay. So, I'll tell you a little story which has absolutely nothing to do with anything, but other than the pomegranate. So there was a chassid of a certain famous Hasidic Rebbe in Brooklyn who had some very, very sharp opinions about Jewish people who were not observant and committed to the Torah way of life. And this chassid of that Rebbe was by our Rebbe. And the Rebbe asked him if he could share a Torah, a teaching from his Rebbe. So he said, yeah. And this is where I heard the story. He said on last week at Sudash Lishit, at Tzal Shudas, the Rebbe had a question that he couldn't answer. The question was that the Gemara tells us that Peishi Yisrael are Malay mitzvahs, afilu Peishi Yisrael, even the sinners of Israel are Malay mitzvahs karimin. They're full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate is packed with seeds. So this Rebbe, who shall remain unnamed, he said, I don't understand the Gemara. If they're packed with mitzvahs, he said, if they're Peishi Yisrael, he said, if they're sinners, how could you say they have mitzvahs? How could you say they have the mitzvah worthless? How could you say they have mitzvahs? If they're Peishi Yisrael, how could you say that they have any mitzvahs? So the Rebbe said, I always had a similar question about the Gemara, but my question came from a little bit different side. The Rebbe said, my question was, if they have so many mitzvahs, how can we call them sinners? Why are they called Peishi Yisrael? Why are they called Peishi Yisrael? And the truth is, that's how Torah wants us to look at a Yid. That a Yid is filled with mitzvahs. And even a Yid, I was speaking to somebody the other day, he's telling me, I'm a very secular Jew, he tells me. Very secular. I'm not religious.
Very secular.
Very secular. So I said, listen, I don't want to fight with you, but I'm going to disagree respectfully. He said, what do you mean? I said, I don't think you're very secular. I think you're religious. He says, no, you're just saying that that's ridiculous. I said, it's actually not, because you're on the phone talking to me, asking me a question about what you should do with your life, And if you weren't religious, why would you be having this question? Like,
He's doing a preponderance of the mitzvahs.
right? And we're talking about a whole bunch of Yiddishkeit related things, but he's kept emphasizing how secular he is. And I'm like, listen to me. You're not secular, you're religious, but you do many more mitzvahs. I said, whatever, fine. It's like, we have to look at like where everybody comes from, and like, I can't judge, but one thing you need to get through your head is, secular you're not. Secular you're not. I mean, I tell this people all the time, I'm secular. You say Kaddish for your father and mother? Yeah, I say Kaddish. You go to Shul Rosh Hashanah? What's Rosh Hashanah? You eat apple and honey? Yeah.
Do you eat limbs off live animals?
Yeah. So you're not really secular. Like, you're not really secular, right? Secular means agnostic. They don't believe in Eibishter. People believe in God. Okay? So the Rebbe says, why they call Pesach Yisrael? If they're packed with mitzvah, why they call Pesach Yisrael? Why am I sharing this? Because the pomegranate is like, Jewish people are obsessed with the pomegranate. It's a Jewish thing. It's a Jewish thing. It's a Jewish thing. From Rosh Hashanah dinner to the description of Jewish people to the hems of the Kohen Gadol's robes, the pomegranates show up.
One of the 7 species.
As one of the 7 species, Eretz Yisrael. The pomegranates show up. It shows up. It's a common imagery. So again, it's not shocking that they would think of pomegranates. But the question is, what are clusters of pomegranates? They don't grow out of barrels of wine. What are they doing in a barrel? Like, what's the symbolism? So la Abaya Amar to Abaya, he said, Oshik iskach kirumono. He says, Rashi says, Oshik iskach means beyoiker timkerenu. Your merchandise is going to fetch a high price. Now the word oshik, kamoi, oshik ligavoch. So he cites a Gemara which indicates that like the person who is charging is like he's commanding a very high price. It's almost like he's oppressing the others. It's not fair. You're commanding such a high price. So it's almost unfair. It's almost undue. The prices are the market can barely bear the prices. So in other words, he said your prices are going to be very, very, very high. Now, how do you get that from a pomegranate? How is it that oshik, what about the pomegranate spells that there's going to be high prices that are coming forth? So I mean, first of all, the idea of pomegranates are that there's a lot of them. There's a lot of seeds. 630. It represents abundance. There's an abundance. Like the Gemara before, it says, Afilu Pesach Yisrael, Melei mitzvahs kerimein. It doesn't say they have a couple of mitzvahs. It says they're packed with mitzvahs. So the whole idea of a pomegranate invariably is going to represent the concept of something which is full. There's a certain fullness that's represented by the pomegranate. If you're talking pomegranate, you're talking fullness. And that's like almost an implicit thing within a pomegranate, that pomegranates are invariably going to represent a certain fullness. And so he said that you're going to sell your wine for a lot of money because pomegranates represent that fullness. I think also pomegranates were an expensive fruit. It's not like apples and oranges. Pomegranates it's like what do we call a specialty item? It's an expensive fruit. So he says it represents abundance, higher quality, a better fruit. So that's what he said to Abaye. To Rava he said, he says, life is not going to be peaches and cream for you, he says. He says, the kave iskach kirmuna, that your wine is going to be detested by the customers like a pomegranate that has an acidic or tart taste attached to it. Like it could set your teeth on edge. It has a certain edge to it, pomegranate. It's like there's a tartness to the pomegranate. So he focused on, like for Abaye, he focused on the price and the symbolism. He said, pomegranates are pricey. Pomegranates are symbolic of abundance and high price. But for Rava, he focused on the taste of the pomegranate. And this is interesting because in the previous interpretation, he also focuses on the taste. He focuses on the sweetness of the dates. And here he's focusing not on the image of the tree. or or its representation, but he focuses on the actual taste of it. So for Rava, it's like what we call a lishitasa. He has a common approach to these things, and in all of them, the barrels are always wine. The question is, what's the wine going to look like? How's the wine going to be unfolding? Okay, now they have a dream where the wine isn't hoisted high and the wine doesn't have funny things clustered or growing out of it, but instead, the barrels are doing a funny dip. They said to him, Chazon Chavito, we had this image we saw, that the barrel, the nefal lebeira, it fell into a pit. Fell into a pit. It doesn't sound very good if your barrels of wine are falling into a pit. So how is he going to make a positive interpretation out of this? La Abaye Omer le to Abaye, he said, Mizbe'ei iskach. He said to Abaye, your wares, your merchandise is going to be in high demand. That's the symbolism of your merchandise, of your barrel falling into the pit, into the hole. Why is that? Kida Omar, he said, there was a euphemism at the time. And the euphemism was, Nafal pita beveira, if bread or pita, like a lafa bread, falls into a pit, veloi ishtakach, and you can't find it. So the truth is that bread is also symbolic of parnasa in general. So it's not like the bread falls and you can't find it. It's a thing that people look for. It's like saying something that people are looking for it. So when the barrel falls into the pit, what does it show everybody doing for the barrel? What is everybody doing about the barrel? They're looking for it. Because when the bread fell into the pit, what was everybody doing? Looking for the bread. So if the bread falls in the pit means they're looking for the bread, then your barrel falling in the pit means everybody is looking for your wine. Looking for your wine means that it's in high demand. It's high demand. That's the way he interpreted it. Ula Rava Omar, and to Rava he said that this messaging that you're seeing with your barrel falling into the pit is psid iskach v'shodei slei leveira.
Forgive me, why is Rava still asking for answers here?
This is a good.
It's brutal. It's just brutal.
That's a good question. Why is Rava still asking for answer? I want to say two things to you. First of all, we had this idea we talked about, I think, 2 or 3 classes ago, where Rava believed that a good dream that makes you feel good was not necessarily right. Sometimes, because you just feel good about yourself, and then. But if something bad is supposed to happen, the agmas nefesh you have from hearing a bad dream, that takes care of whatever negative is going to happen. So Rava may have actually been enjoying this flagellation, right?
Good one.
You know when Rava is not going to be happy? When he sees it happen.
Of course.
Because he didn't see any of this happen yet. Okay? It's going to. We're going to see later on. All of a sudden, Rava is going to get very angry at Bar Haddaya. Yeah. But that's when it actually happens.
So you saw the dreams as
potential negativity. It's like we say.
But the physicality never occurred.
Not yet.
So he was.
Rava believed that by having the dream in a negative way and the agmas nefesh that it causes, that would be a kapara. You ever see people lose something material and say, kapara. What are they saying? There was something negative, and Baruch Hashem, it was a flat tire, and not, God forbid, something which a person gets damaged. Right? So that's a kapara, Baruch Hashem.
Okay.
Understand? So there's an element. That's number one. Number two, and in this continuation of number one, Rava didn't see any of this happen.
Right.
He didn't know anything was going to happen.
Either of them.
But they're going. So we're getting for interpretations, and so Abaye is, he's having nice interpretation. So what's not to like? But for Rava, on the contrary, good. Let's spend the negativity this way. And you see, for Rava, there was negativity in the pipeline. Unfortunately, you can see that. All right. So he says you're basically your parnasa is going down the tubes. You're going down the drain. That's what he said to him. That's very obvious, right? So in Abaye, for Abaye, it's imagery. The imagery is, what's the imagery of a pit? The imagery of a pit is people looking for something. But for Rava, it's literal, like the taste. It's literal. Your barrels are in the pit. Your business is in the pits. You're down the drain.
So Hillel always talks about, until the pit is dug for the wicked.
Yeah, so falling in a pit is not a good thing.
No.
No, that's not a recommended experience. Okay. Now everything shifts into talk about the wacky world of dreams here. Now we're going to go from barrels. We had bread and fruit and foliage, and now we're going to be heading into a donkey. This is like wow. Like you got to be kidding. How did they have this kind of dream? So the next dream is they come to him and they tell him like this: Amri lei, Chazena bar chamra. We saw a baby donkey. Bar chamra is the child of a donkey. It's like a baby donkey. The koi aisdon, who is like above our heads. He's like above us. And the donkey who's like above us, like around he is braying. The noyer, he's braying, a braying donkey. So what is going on there, he said. What Rashi says the koi aisdon means merashosov, like around his head. Kidetakume, like we have the Targum where Yaakov Avinu was laying on his deathbed, and it says that Yosef bows, right? There's to Rashosov, because the Shechina is berashosov. The Shechina is around his head, like his pillows, like the area around his head. So over there, the Targum says asdoihi. So from there we can draw a parallel. Rashi says that the word aistan means around their head. Has he translated it in the English? What's the translation he gives? Aistan? Similar, like
Doesn't say.
Doesn't say?
No.
Koi aistan, they don't translate it? All right.
Standing near your head and braying.
Near your head, okay.
Yeah.
Now, how do they have this image of the donkey? How do they have an image of a donkey? So first of all, that's actually much less of a question than you might imagine, because there's a mitzvah called pidyon peter chamar.
Right.
It's a mitzvah.
They did it in the city a few
It's a there was a pidyon peter chamar right here in Toronto a few years ago.
Yeah.
Now, it happens in Toronto like every 50 years or
I don't
something.
think it ever happened.
I don't know if it ever happened. I don't know if it's happening again so fast. Every once in a while, somebody gets in his head the idea that he already did 612 mitzvahs and he's got to do the 630th mitzvah. and he's going to buy a donkey and get a firstborn donkey and do the mitzvah. Fine. It's a beautiful thing. Okay. But I think once upon a time it was pretty common.
I think.
It was pretty common once upon a time.
Well, if you're an agricultural.
If you're an agricultural society,
Sure.
The donkeys were once upon a time. That was the trucks of. That was even you see how the Arabs living in the Middle East, many of them have donkeys. They still didn't get the memo that there's cars today because they're riding donkeys. That's but donkeys were for forever in that part of the world. That was so if you had donkeys, you're going to have a peter chamar. You're going to have a baby donkey. So they came from a peter chamar, and maybe it wasn't such a common mitzvah. And maybe that was the yeshiva that day. They learned the halacha of peter chamar. It's not so hard to imagine. It's not hard to imagine how they would both have an image of a braying peter chamar. By the way, we can make fun of ourselves a little bit. Like religious Jews are not comfortable with animals, b'chol. Like if you want, somebody said, if you want to freak out the people, go in Mea Sharim with a big dog. Everybody will run away from you.
Right. Remember Rabbi Price?
I heard of Rabbi Price.
Two
I know. I heard he had
giant
dogs.
German shepherds, and they were terrifying, and he loved it.
Fine. I'm just saying most from Yidden do not like dogs. That's as they say, zot uvda. That's a reality. So when you talk about the peter chamar we had in Toronto, it was pretty funny. I was chuckling to myself. Everybody's like, oh. The guy holding the donkey is like,
Explain what it is.
There's a mitzvah. You have a firstborn donkey. You exchange it for a sheep, right? So we had a sheep. We had a donkey. It was very exciting. It was a whole safari. I'm saying, like, everybody. It wasn't like, oh, cute, I want to pet the donkey. Everybody was like, no. So the donkey, when he gets picked up, he has to be lifted up, right? It wouldn't be surprising to me if you lift up this donkey and you go, oh, the donkey's probably making noises. Well, you want to be lifted up like a kaparas chicken. He's probably making noises. So they came from a pidyon petach hamar and they lifted up the donkey, and the donkey was making noises. So they had that dream the night. I mean, it's not hard to imagine that this was what they experienced that day. But the question is, what does it mean? What is the meaning of this? So Bar Haddaya gets very creative here. I mean, this is like creativity on steroids and a clairvoyance that I don't know. I never could have thought of this. So he says the following. He says to Abaye, Amar Leila Abaye, he says, Malka Haves, you are going to be the king. But of course, the king of the Jewish people doesn't mean the king. He doesn't have. It means he's a Rosh Yeshiva. He'll be the head of the academy. Malka Haves, Rashi says, Rosh Yeshiva Hadorash Drashot. You're going to be the one giving the sermons. You're going to teaching you're going to be the main man. Now in those days, the Rosh Yeshiva would speak in a very, very deep way. And many of the people did not understand what he was saying. So there would be somebody who was profound and deep and could understand the Rosh Yeshiva. And he would interpret the words and convey the words of the Rosh Yeshiva so that the masses would be able to understand. And his name was the interpreter. Not that he spoke a different language. He was able to interpret the profundity. In other words, the job of a Rosh Yeshiva was not to speak to the lowest common denominator. His job was to teach Torah on the highest level. But the question, what happens to the people who are incapable of understanding in the highest level? And the answer is, those people need an interpreter. And the interpreter here is a donkey. That's the funny part. So the Turgan is like standing behind him, like over his head. And he says, he's also speaking very loud. The Rosh Yeshiva didn't necessarily speak loud. Why should he scream on top of his lungs? Most of the people don't understand what he's saying anyway. He's got his coterie of disciples around him. They're picking it up. And he says he brays like a donkey. He said, so he was known, he was talking like a donkey, loud like a donkey, simple as a donkey. He was like a donkey in comparison to the Rosh Yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva was so deep and profound, the words he was using, he was braying like a donkey. That's the imagery. Like I said, this is very fantastical. How you get there, that's like something really, really special to come up with such an interpretation, right? From and of course, by the way, Abaye does become the Rosh Yeshiva, and there is an interpreter, and I guess the donkey is the perfect example for him.
What does that mean, though? Like the Peter Chamor are erased from your tefillin.
We'll get that. That's next. Let's see. So I just wanted to share like this. So the Birchos Avram, Rashi says what Rashi says. So that's what it means. But he's looking for a little bit of depth over here. What's going on over here? So he says like this. He says that first of all, the letters Aleph and Ches are interchangeable. They come from the same place. They're vowelized by virtue of the same parts of the mouth. So he says because the Aleph and the Ches are interchangeable, Chamor could also be Omar. And Amora is the rabbi who's teaching the Gemara. Okay, so that's what he says. But he says so they could be Amor to Chamor. All right, fine. I mean, that doesn't talk to me so much. But I like very much what he says afterwards. He says that our sages said to us about the words Yisachar, when there's imagery, when Yaakov Avinu conveys imagery about the diligence in Torah study, he says Yisachar is going to be Chamor Gorem, like a bony donkey bearing the burden of Torah study. Now, the donkeys are hardy animals. They're not like these graceful stallions that gallop. Nobody has donkey races. The donkey climbs mountains. He weathers the roads, dusty roads. He's a hardy animal. He's a pack animal. He's a service animal. He's not a Lamborghini. He's what you call a Mazda. He's a pickup truck.
Lamborghini started as a tractor. It was son of a farmer.
I knew I'm going to do something wrong here, Dimitri. I knew you were going to tell me a Lamborghini is really a pickup truck.
His vision was to create the best motors for the tractors that wouldn't break down. Then it
became a sports car.
And making the
There you go. Okay. I guess you now we know that Every donkey can be a stallion someday. So what is the point? Why do we say Yisachar Chamar Gorim? Why do we say Yisachar Chamar Gorim? So it's a very beautiful idea that's talked about when it comes to learning Torah. What is the most important ingredient in success in Torah study? And the answer to that question in a word,
What's the question?
what's the most important ingredient for success in Torah study? In a word, in Hebrew it's hasmada, and in English it's diligence, to stick at it. They used to say in Lithuania, where the currency for Jews in Lithuania was Torah. They didn't have any other currency. Nothing else interested them. It was all scholarship. That was it. I know my grandfather comes from Lithuanian stock. That was the only currency they dealt. There's no other currency. No other currency on the market. That was it. So they used to say like this. They used to say, a good behind is better than a good head. You sit on your behind. In English, in Yiddish, it's a little better. A tucha. A gute tuchas, they said, is better than a gute cup. Because you sit on your behind. And the point was, in Yiddish, it's called, when you sit and learn Bahasmada, it's called to kvetch a bank. Literally bench press, but it's nothing to do with weightlifting. You press the bench, you sit there, you go over it, you learn, you're devoted, you commit yourself. That's really where success in Torah comes from. Brilliance is nice, but brilliance, picking up ideas and coming to creativity, that's not what Torah study is about. The emet of Torah comes through diligence and devotion and commitment to learn something once and to study it a second time and a third time, to really toil till you, as you say in Yiddish, brechen the cup. You have to break your head open. That's where Torah study comes from. And therefore the animal that was used to metaphorize this toil in Torah study was the donkey. Yisachar, whose blessing was success in academia, the academia of Torah, in Torah study, was Yisachar Chamar Gorim. Yisachar Chamar Gorim. So that's what the Birchas Avram says. That's what this is like. That's why the image represents Torah. It's a natural representation for Torah. There's a beautiful teaching from the Rebbe's father. The Rebbe's father says, why is Yisachar written with two sins, with two shins? Right? So this is a thing from Chazal, yesh sechar, that there is a reward. But the Rebbe's father says an incredible thing. His father says that in Torah there's something called nigled the Torah, the revealed area of Torah, and there's pnimius Torah, the mystical part of Torah. He says one is overt, it's the covert, and one is the secret part of Torah, which is what we call the extra, esoteric part of Torah. Esoteric. You know where esoteric comes from? You know the word comes from? Exoterikos is Greek for the outside. Esoterikos is Greek for the inside. So Aristotle, he used to give philosophy lectures. It was like the movies in Athens, in the Lyceum. So that he would call those teachings, he would call them the exoterikos teachings, the outside teachings for the masses. He would dazzle the masses with his, he was a great performer apparently, Aristotle, and he would dazzle them but he would laugh at them. He would laugh behind their back. He wasn't a very nice person apparently. And to his inner coterie of disciples, for them he would share his deepest thoughts, and that was called his esoterikos. And I think he also had like some garden path he used to walk in, like inside, away from the Lyceum, which was a he had his private pathway, and that was called the esoterikos pathway, the inner pathway, and that's where he would teach his disciples. So that's where the word comes from, right? So there's the exoteric part of Torah and the esoteric part of Torah. There's the overt part of Torah, the secret part of Torah. So the Rebbe's father said, that's why there's two shins in Yisachar, because Yisachar represents Torah. Yisachar, one shin is not pronounced, because one of the shins represents Pnimius HaTorah.
That's nice.
Right? But the point that I think, and I don't think this has to contradict Rashi, the point that Birchas Avram makes is, that explains to us how Bar Haddaya, because we're trying to figure out, how did Bar Haddaya come to this? That the donkey was a natural representation for Torah. And if I may, I want to add just a tiny little detail. What was the main function of the Rosh Hashiva? His job was l'chadesh. His job was to find novelty, to teach profundity, new things. What was the job of the metarguman? To remain loyal to what he heard, not to add his own things. The metarguman who was adding his own ideas is not a metarguman. It's like a difference in a singer and a composer. The singer is supposed to sing what the composer composed. Some singers are, it used to be like a joke. It said, as nicht can singer, as a nicht can menagen, he's a mechaber. That's in Yiddish used to say, certain people when they sing a niggin, they make up their own niggin. They put their own connection. They personalize the song. They remake the song. So they used to say, as nicht can menagen, he's not a singer. He's not, because a singer is supposed to be faithful to the music that was composed. He's a composer. He's busy adding in his own little kind of nuances all along. What was the best meturgamon? What's the best example of a meturgamon? The meturgamon who is on top of his game, what is he? The meturgamon who doesn't innovate, doesn't add. The meturgamon who adds is no good. And we don't want to hear your Torah. We want to hear the teacher's Torah. The meturgamon's job was to be able to convey the teachings of the Torah. So it's the opposite of creativity. He's carrying it forth. So therefore, if you want to look for the opposite of dynamism and creativity and freshness, which image of Torah would that be then? That's the donkey. He carries the load. He brings them the load. So it's only natural. And the raising of the voice, that's the idea of, so to speak, of the meturgamon who shouts on top of the crowd. It's very interesting. The Rambam has a whole discussion about the meturgamon. It says when he poses a question to the teacher, to the Rosh Hashiva, he's not supposed to raise his voice higher than the teacher. Right, so there's a whole Kesef Mishnah, I think a Kesef Mishnah on this, where he asks a question. What's the source of the Rambam for that? Right, and he says when Hashem was giving the Torah through Moshe Rabbeinu, so it says Elikim Yadaber Moshe Yanenu B'Koil, that there was like a similar voice, like there was a similarity in the voices. But he says when it comes, however, to conveying the message, then you're able to speak very loudly. So some of the Mefarshim suggest that this Gemara is the proof of that. The braying donkey is the idea of the amplification. What's the job of a meturgamon? Not to give his own ideas, but simply to make the ideas of the teacher audible, loud enough to be understood. His job is to amplify. A microphone that has a voice of its own is like a car that drives on its own. Chitty chitty bang bang, does whatever it wants. That could be a problem. And these days it's part of everyday life already. Cars drive by themselves now. But once upon a time that was just a science fiction thing. The meturgamon is not supposed to be giving his own thing. He's supposed to merely be amplifying the teacher, the name of the teacher. So this, I think, is the way to understand the business of the braying donkey. Okay, what about Rava? Oh, for Rava it's very, very different. Rava comes with a totally different concept. For Rava he says, L'Rava Omar le Peter Chamor Gehit mitfiloch. The Peter Chamor is erased from your tefillin. So Rava says, Mr. Bar Haddaya, with all due respect, I mean, there is, in the tefillin, it says, called Peter Chamor Tifta. It's one of the portions of tefillin, the Parsha of Kaddish, right? Yeah. So Rava says to him, Amar le, Lididi Chazili V'isei. I saw my own tefillin. I saw my own tefillin. And there are some people, when the tefillin get checked, they want to see the tefillin. Want to see the tefillin. So I heard once from a grandson of the person who used to fix the Rebbe's tefillin. His sefer, his name was Rav Matlin, Olav Shalom. I heard from his grandson. His grandson told me that his grandfather told him when he checked the Rebbe's tefillin, he would open the Rebbe's tefillin in the Rebbe's room. And he said he was there with his ink and his quill, and he said the Rebbe would check the tefillin together with him. And Rabbi Matlin told his grandson, the Rebbe said, add a drop of ink over here. And he said, I didn't ask any questions. Whatever the Rebbe told me to do, that's what I did. The Parshas of the Rebbe's tefillin are from the Alter Rebbe Sefer, the Bruvin's tefillin, which are extraordinary level of quality of tefillin. And the Rebbe would check the tefillin. It would be in the Rebbe's room. The Rebbe would be there, checking the tefillin, seeing everything about the tefillin, from opening to closing. So Rava, it seems, did the same thing. Sure. That's what Rava did. Great Jews. He knew. He didn't do the umnis. He wasn't necessarily the checker, but he said, I read my own parshas. I saw my own parshas. He said, what are you talking about? It's there. And like the Marsha says something incredible. Did you notice something shifted here? Until now, Bar Haddaya was talking about things that are going to be. Now, for the first time, Bar Haddaya is talking about something that already is. It's a shift. Something shifted here. We're going to start seeing a shift. Eventually, Rava, everything starts to shift at this point. You see that Rava comes in a different way. The next episode already changed. What shifted? This shifted. It's not simply interpretation. Now he's already telling him facts. Now Rava's getting nervous. He said, "Oh, 1 second." And now he's telling me something that is. How does he know this? How could he possibly have this clairvoyance? So he says, "I saw the tefillin and they're there."
Right.
So Bar Haddaya says to him, "Yeah." He says, "You saw the tefillin, and you saw that the Petach HaMer is there. However, what you don't realize," he says, where am I? Sorry, I lost my place again. Omar lei vav the Petach HaMer vaday gohit mit tefillah.
How do
The
you
vav.
spell chamor?
Oh, that's a very good question. So in the tefillin, chamor is written ches mem resh without the vav.
Right. Okay.
Without the vav.
So why would they put a vav in?
Oh, so why would they put a vav in? Like, and what do you mean the vav is missing? What is going on? What does it even mean, right? So the Mefarshim have a whole discussion about this. And you take a look at, let's start with Rashi. Rashi says, "Beparsha v'haya keviyacha," the parsha that says the words of haya keviyacha, one of the 4 portions of the tefillin. It says, "V'chol petach amar tifte b'seh, v'hu chaser vav." Rashi says it's missing a vav. Petach amar is spelled ches mem resh. Ubetfillin shel Rava kasvi hakosev malei. The sofer wrote it with a vav.
Wait, do we write it differently in tefillin?
No.
Or just the
No.
sofer made a mistake?
The sofer made a mistake.
Got it.
V'achar kach mochokoi, and then he erased it. V'hainu de gohit mochik. He said he erased it. He erased the vav. Now the question is, the Mefarshim have a big discussion about this. Does this mean that Rava's tefillin were not kosher? Does it mean that he just said something about his tefillin? If he told him his tefillin were not kosher, that would be a good thing, not a bad thing. It would be a good thing, not a bad thing, because at least now he knows his tefillin have a problem, right? How would they not be kosher? They would not be kosher if he finished writing the parsha and then he went back and erased the vav and rewrote, because tefillin have to be written in order. So they're written in order. There was an incredible story that happened many years ago in Crown Heights. There was a certain individual who had a lot of misfortune in his business. And he wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "Check your tefillin." So he checked his tefillin, and they said, "It's beautiful tefillin." And he had a lot of misfortune in business, and he wrote to the Rebbe said, "Check your tefillin." So he checked his tefillin. This happened 3 times. And the Rebbe kept saying, "Check your tefillin."
I remember this story.
So he went to the one of the Rabbanim.
Like a high up sofer.
He went to one of the Rabbanim and he said, I think Rabbi Marlow said to him, "Go to a certain sefer. There's a certain sefer, is a big expert in Crown Heights. He taught me Safras. I learned from how to write. His name is Rabbi Elishevitz, Shalom Elishevitz. A brilliant person, very unusual person." He said, "Check your tefillin by Elishevitz." This is a story as I heard. I don't know if it's true. Anyway, went to Shalom Elishevitz. Shalom was looking and looking. He knew the whole story. He was looking at him up in the light. He noticed, and you have to be like a perfect eye, he noticed that the name of Hashem, something was a tad different than the other letters. The thickness, ink is thinner, something was different. He picked up something different with the name of Hashem that was written. So he found that HaRoeh tefillin, and he called the sofer, and he says, "Why is it how do you write your tefillin?" And the fellow, who was well-intentioned, but clearly ignorant, said that when he writes his tefillin, amongst the things he does is he dips the kulmus, he dips the feather in the mikveh before he writes Hashem's name. But because it's very onerous to dip your feather in the mikveh, to keep running to the mikveh in the middle of his tefillin, he writes the tefillin, he leaves the name of Hashem empty, then he goes and dips the thing, and basically the tefillin are not kosher. Because the tefillin not written has to be written kesidron, has to be written in order. Now, by the way, for a Sefer Torah, that's fine. Sefer Torah is fine, but for tefillin, it's not. Anyway, I don't know if the story is true. I never verified the story. I probably should. But at any rate, the man got new tefillin, and his life turned around.
He should have done that in the first place.
Maybe.
After he spoke to the Rebbe, and they couldn't find it, he should have said, "You know what? Something's wrong with this tefillin, obviously. I need new
But the
tefillin."
question is what could be wrong, right? So this is the story of the Gemara here. So some explain the Gemara like that this person realized that he wrote wrong, and he went and erased it and rewrote, erased the vav and the resh, and rewrote a big resh. Others maintain that how could you say such a thing? That Rava wore tefillin that were in kosher. Cannot say that Rava wore tefillin that's not kosher. Inconceivable tefillin not kosher. So what happened? What happened was the man wrote a vav, and either turned, like he erased the vav and then wrote a resh after, or turned the vav into a resh, just added on. But at any rate, so it's kosher tefillin, but he said you should know the image is something about your tefillin, which is a fascinating thing. So what's the good or bad? I don't know. There's a connection that the film weren't written perfectly. Even if they're kosher, they weren't written in the most perfect of ways. Anyway, this is like the discussion that we have about the idea of what it means precisely, the idea of gochit. At any rate, b'cholefin, like I said, the Marsha says something very interesting. He says at this point, he says, we see now there's a seismic shift in the interpretation of the dreams, as he says. Marsha says like this. He says, Gam kein mefurish b'chalemis the Bar Haddaya the kol pisrei nechalemis holcho b'achar hapeh. Up until now, we were seeing what the Gemara says earlier, that what will the dream end up being, whatever the way it was interpreted. That's what the Marav Chalem is. Until Shanase Kvar, here we tell this dream. This image of the dream is al dvar Shanase, something that happened. The Nimchak HaSefer, the Vav. And here it's not a question just like, the interpreter twists it this way, that way. Here Rava said, this guy can see some stuff. I think now is when Rava started to get nervous. Right? Still now he said, let him say whatever he says. Kapara, so whatever, it doesn't matter. Now all of a sudden he knows something. He knows something about my tefillin. This is spooky stuff already.
How could he know something about my tefillin?
How could he know something about his tefillin? Right? And he speaks with such authority. So this already, this is. He came and Rava responds to him and he says, I saw the tefillin. Petach Hamer is there. And he says, yeah, Petach Hamer. The Vav, there was a Vav there, they got erased. So at this point, you're going to see there comes a shift in the Gemara, because as we move away from tefillin, now Rava is going to come with already a little bit of a different approach. Anyway, this is, as I said, a continuation.
Before you close your Gemaras, put this in 56A3, please.
Okay. As everybody is putting their markers in the Gemara, let me tell all of you out there that we're going to be back with Hashem's help next Thursday with the next episode. And it would be great if you're not yet subscribed to subscribe or share with your friends and extended family. And please share the class. Please share the class, because learning Hashem's Torah is an inspirational thing and an insightful thing. And even though all of these classes cascade one into the other and one builds on the other, you can still learn each class independently. And in the end, when we finish all of this, we're going to have a whole new appreciation of subconsciousness and dreams and dream interpretation and its many messages. And as I like to say at the end of all these classes, the Eibishter should help us, that we should merit to the time of Hayinu Kecholmin, with the coming of Mashiach, ben Heira, ubi ameinu speedily and in our days. May it not be a dream, may it be materialized, ben Heira, ubi ameinu, amen. Thank you for joining. Laila Tov.